Choose something stable.
Do something big.
Make the right decision.
Don't waste time.
Have you ever heard of such phrases from your family, friends, society? Yes. Voices represent expectations from people, and each phrase becomes the mental noise in your head. Sometimes louder, too. How many of you here have ever heard these voices around you? Maybe not rarely, but every day. This leads us to a confused stage. If I had to describe what thinking about my future feels like, I wouldn't describe it as a clear path or a big decision. I would describe it as a noise. Not the kind you can hear clearly, but the kind that stays in your head. Not chaos, not confusion, but a constant low noise that never really leaves you. Just like the voices you heard right now. Choose something stable, do something big, make the right decision, don't waste time. And the strange part is, these voices don't come from one person. They come from family, friends, society, and slowly start sounding like our own thoughts. Let me talk about something we don't talk about enough. The crossroads of not knowing yet. I remember on the first day of my 9th grade, my teacher asked me, "What do you want to become?" It didn't feel like a big question at that moment. People around me answered so quickly. Doctor, engineer, something impressive, something certain. When it came to me, I smiled and said something random. Something that sounded right. And the conversation moved on. But later, I kept thinking about that moment. Not because of what I said, but because I didn't mean it. It wasn't my answer. It was just an answer. An answer that ended the conversation but started a question inside me. And the most surprising part is, we all go through this. But we go through it quietly. It doesn't always show on the outside. In classrooms, in everyday moments, in conversations, we appear confident. We nod when others talk about their plans. We speak when we are asked, and we move on like everything is clear. But inside, there is still questioning, still doubt, still a search for something that actually feels right. In fact, a UN-supported study involving over 21,000 students reported that only 10% of teenagers receive professional career guidance. That means many students out there are expected to make important decisions without guidance or support. Perhaps that's one reason why many students face uncertainty. If you think about it, this pressure to know wasn't always this intense. People in the 80s and 90s weren't constantly expected to define their entire future so early. There wasn't this constant need to have everything figured out at such a young age. But today, it feels different. We're expected to have clarity before we have experience. We're expected to decide even before we truly understand ourselves. And because of that, something changes. We stop exploring and we start answering. We stop asking ourselves what we truly like, and we start saying what sounds acceptable. But what we don't see is that many of us are standing in the same place. Not lost, but not fully certain either. Just in between. Not failing, not behind, just in progress. And because no one really talks about it openly, it starts to feel like we are the only ones experiencing it. So, instead of saying, I don't know yet, we hide it. We replace it with answers that sound complete even when they aren't. And over time, this becomes a habit. We get better at sounding certain than actually being certain. We master clarity in words while losing clarity in thought. And maybe that's why it feels so heavy. Because it's not loud, it's not clear, no one else can really see it. There are no signboards, no deadlines, no right answers waiting at the end. And this is where we misunderstand growth. We think we need clarity before we take the first step. But clarity rarely comes first. Because clarity is not something we're given. It is something we grow into. Before we can choose a path, we need to understand ourselves. And that doesn't happen in one moment or one answer. It happens slowly in the things we try, in the things we enjoy, and in things we realize don't feel right. So, not knowing yet is not a weakness. It isn't confusion. Maybe it's awareness. Maybe it's honesty. Imagine a traveler walking through a dark path at night. He didn't have a map and he didn't know where the path would lead. All he had was a small lamp in his hand. But it didn't light up the whole road. It only showed a few steps ahead. And for a moment, he stood there, waiting for the entire path to become clear. But it didn't. So he took one step, then another, and slowly the path began to appear, not all at once, but just enough. And that's the mistake we make. We wait for clarity before we move, instead of moving to create clarity. And maybe we have been waiting for our whole future to make sense like that. Completely, clearly, all at once. But what if it was never supposed to? What if we're only meant to see a little at a time? The next step matters more than having the entire plan. So, if you're standing at a crossroad of not knowing yet, don't be afraid of uncertainty. Be afraid of standing still.